"Say it was an accident," my mother whispered, gripping my hands so tight it hurt, "or you'll lose this family forever." That was the second time in my life she asked me to lie to protect my sister. The first time, I was 16, and there was blood on my collar. Welcome back to the Family Revenge Tales. My name is Avery Bennett, and for a long time, I didn't think my story mattered enough to tell. I want to tell you what it feels like to grow up as the child nobody worries about. Not the favorite, not the problem, just the one who's expected to be fine, always, no matter what. It started before I can even remember it starting. My mother, Rebecca, had lost several pregnancies before I was born, and a few more after. Nobody in my family ever talked about it directly. If I asked questions as a little girl, I was told to be grateful for what I had and to stop bringing up things that made everyone sad. So I learned, the way children learn everything important without being told directly, that silence was what kept the peace in our house. I got very good at being quiet. Then, on my 10th birthday, my mother went into labor 2 months early. I remember the paramedics, the fear on my father's face, being sent to a neighbor's house while my family rushed to the hospital. My sister Sienna was born that night, impossibly small, and she spent weeks in intensive care fighting just to breathe on her own. She survived, and from that day forward, my family started calling her their miracle. I want to be honest with you. At first, I loved her fiercely. I used to sit by her hospital bassinet and talk to her before she could even understand words, telling her about school, about my friends, promising her I'd always look out for her. I meant it. I still mean parts of it, even now. But something shifted once Sienna came home. It was subtle at first, the way water finds a crack in stone. My parents began treating her survival as proof that she was special in a way the rest of us weren't. And slowly, without anyone deciding it out loud, I became the child nobody had to think about. The first time I really understood what that meant, I was 11. Sienna's first birthday fell on my birthday, because of course it did, and my parents threw her an enormous party. Balloons, family driving in from 3 states, a cake almost as tall as she was. I got a small grocery store cake after everyone else had already eaten and gone home. When I asked why, my mother knelt down, took my hands, and said the sentence that would define the next 7 years of my life. "You've already had so many birthdays, sweetheart. Sienna almost didn't get one." I didn't have words for what that did to me then. I do now. It taught me that my existence was something to apologize for, and hers was something to be grateful for, simply because she had almost not existed at all. So, I adapted. I want you to understand, I wasn't a sad, mopey child. I became fiercely capable instead. I made my own lunches, I handled my own school forms, I stopped asking for anything that cost money or attention. I stopped inviting friends over because friends asked questions I didn't have good answers for. My parents praised me constantly for being so mature, so independent, so easy. It took me years to understand what they were actually praising. They were praising the fact that I needed nothing from them. Meanwhile, Sienna was learning something very different, that anger, tears, and outbursts brought the whole world running to her. There was one person who saw what was happening to me clearly, and that was my grandmother, Evelyn Carter. She never said a harsh word about my mother in front of me, but she also never pretended things were fine. Instead, she started quietly keeping records, my report cards, my school awards, photographs from birthdays where I was barely in the frame, cards that arrived late or didn't arrive at all, and the ones that did, she saved. She put everything into an old cardboard storage box, and on the side, in her careful handwriting, she wrote, "The life they forgot." "Someday," she told me, tucking a certificate into that box, "you're gonna need proof that you were here." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. As Sienna grew older, her behavior became difficult in ways that worried her teachers. She had outbursts at school. Counselors recommended evaluations. More than one doctor gently suggested professional support. My mother rejected every single suggestion. Sienna has been through more than most children ever will, she'd say, and the conversation would end there, every time. It became the family's answer to everything. Whenever Sienna caused trouble, someone would retell the story of how close she'd come to dying, and just like that, whatever she'd done stopped mattering. At 16, my birthday finally became something I couldn't survive quietly anymore. Sienna was furious that I was getting any attention that day, and during an argument in the kitchen, she shoved me hard enough that I hit the corner of a cabinet. It left a small scar near my eye that I still have. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor with a washcloth pressed to my face, waiting for someone to come check on me. My mother came in, eventually. She looked at the cut, looked at me, and gripped my hands. "Say it was an accident," she whispered. "Say you fell." That was the night I understood, all the way down in my bones, that in my family, Sienna's feelings would always weigh more than my safety. I went to my room and I opened the small savings account my grandmother had helped me start years earlier, and I started adding to it every week after that. I wasn't running away from anything yet. I was building a door. At 17, I found something in our basement that changed everything. I was looking for old photo albums, and instead, I found a box of documents connected to Sienna's early years. Medical records, letters from school counselors, formal recommendations for evaluation. Tucked among them was a journal entry in my father's handwriting. He'd written that he knew Sienna needed real help. He knew, in his own words, that I was being neglected. But he wrote that confronting my mother about it would, quote, destroy the family. And so, again and again, he chose silence instead. My father wasn't blind to what was happening. He was afraid, and his fear had cost me years I would never get back. There was something worse waiting for me in that box, too. Letters and notes revealed that my parents had told relatives I'd grown distant because I was jealous of my sister. That explained why cards stopped coming, why nobody called to check on me, why, when I pulled away, nobody came looking. My parents hadn't just neglected me. They had built a story that made their neglect look like my fault and handed that story to everyone who might otherwise have asked questions. For the first time, I understood why no one had ever come to rescue me. They'd been told the wrong story from the very beginning. My parents expected me to stay close to home after high school, attend a local college, help manage things with Sienna. Family takes care of family, my mother told me more than once, and I would just smile and say nothing. Quietly, I applied to nursing programs 2 hours away in Charlotte. My grandmother helped me with what she could. I worked evenings and saved every dollar. I wasn't planning revenge, I want to be clear about that. I was planning freedom. My 18th birthday turned into the biggest family gathering we had in years. My parents actually promised me that this time would be different, that this celebration would be for me, too. When I walked in, there was a banner across the room. It read, Sienna's Journey. My graduation, the thing we were supposedly there to celebrate, was mentioned once in passing. And then Sienna, upset that people were looking at my diploma instead of hers, knocked over and shattered one of my grandmother's most treasured keepsakes. I didn't cry that night. Something in me had gone very still and very clear. I walked into the other room and I came back carrying the life they forgot. I set it on the table in front of everyone, and I opened it. Photographs, awards, cards that had never been sent, records nobody else had ever seen. Evidence of an entire childhood my family had quietly erased. You didn't forget me, I told them, my voice steadier than I expected it to be. You were told to forget me. I laid it all out, calmly. Every birthday that disappeared, Every time Sienna's behavior was excused, the scar near my eye and the lie about how I got it, my father's journal and what he'd known and chosen not to say, my mother's careful, decade-long rewriting of our family's story. I watched relatives' faces change as they realized the version of events they'd believed for years didn't match what was sitting right in front of them. That night, I left. I took the box with me, and I didn't look back. I built a life in Charlotte. I became a nurse, a pediatric nurse specifically, because I understood exactly what it felt like to be the child sitting quietly in the corner while the adults focused entirely on someone else. And I wanted to be the person in the room who actually noticed. My roommate Jordan became the closest thing I had to family. My grandmother remained my anchor, calling every Sunday, sending photographs, reminding me who I was. Every year on my birthday, Jordan made me a lemon cake because it was the flavor I'd always wanted as a little girl and never once received. For the first time in my life, my name was written on a cake correctly, and the celebration was entirely mine. Back home, without me there to quietly absorb the consequences, things got harder to hide. Sienna's behavior escalated. My parents kept rescuing her from every situation, smoothing things over with schools, with neighbors, with money when nothing else worked. But the world outside our house didn't operate the way our house did. Eventually, at 18, Sienna was involved in a serious altercation that left another young woman injured. This time, there were witnesses, security footage, medical documentation. For the first time in her life, there was no story anyone could quietly rewrite. A psychological evaluation was ordered, and the evaluator needed to speak with people who'd known Sienna throughout her life, including me. 10 years after I'd walked out of that house with a cardboard box in my arms, my parents showed up at my apartment door. My mother was crying before I even fully opened it. She said the words I had waited my whole childhood to hear. "We failed you." I felt something in my chest crack open, just slightly. For one moment, I was 11 years old again, still hoping. Then my father explained why they'd actually come. They wanted me to speak with the evaluator. They wanted me to leave out the birthdays, leave out the scar, leave out the years of excuses and the box in my closet that held all the proof. They wanted me to say our family had been normal. And when I hesitated, my mother played the only card she had left. "If you loved your sister," she said, "you'd do this for her." I understood then exactly what that apology had cost them to say, and exactly what they wanted in return. They weren't asking me to forgive them. They were asking me to disappear again, quietly, one more time, the way I always had. I didn't answer them that day. Instead, before I did anything else, I went to see Sienna myself. We hadn't spoken alone in 10 years. She was angry at first, defensive, still so much like the girl I remembered. But somewhere in that conversation, her voice cracked, and she asked me something I never expected. Why did everyone stop celebrating me? I sat with that question for a long moment before I answered, because in that moment, I understood something painful and complicated all at once. Sienna wasn't simply the villain of my story. She was another child, shaped and damaged by the very same family system that had shaped and damaged me. She'd just been damaged in the opposite direction. When I met with the evaluator, I didn't exaggerate anything, and I didn't destroy my sister to make a point. I told the truth. All of it. The birthdays, the scar, the years of excuses, my father's silence, my mother's careful control of our family story, the way Sienna had been taught over and over that consequences were something that happened to other people. I told the evaluator I believed my sister needed real accountability, but also real help, not just punishment and not just protection. When my mother later accused me of trying to destroy our family, I looked her in the eye and said the only thing that felt true. No, I stopped helping you hide the wreck. Sienna entered intensive treatment after that. My parents were required to attend family counseling, and for the first time, my father admitted, out loud, that his silence all those years had been a choice, not an accident. My mother began, slowly and painfully, to face grief she'd buried for decades. We didn't become a perfect family. I didn't rush to forgive anyone. I built boundaries instead, and I held them. Eventually, my mother gave me an apology with nothing attached to it, no request hidden inside it, and I agreed to occasional coffee. Nothing more than that, but nothing less either. This year, I turned 28, and I celebrated my birthday surrounded by the people I chose for myself. Jordan brought out a lemon cake. My grandmother took another photograph for the box. My name was written across the top, spelled correctly, exactly as it should be. Avery Bennett. Nobody blew out my candles for me. Nobody changed the subject. Nobody asked me to make myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. Later that evening, a card arrived from Sienna. It was short. It wasn't an apology, and it wasn't an excuse either. It just said, "Happy birthday, Avery. I hope you know I'm finally learning who I am without everyone telling me." I don't know exactly what our relationship will look like in the years ahead, but for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't need to know. That night, I opened The Life They Forgot one last time, and I added a final photograph. Not a picture of the little girl my family had overlooked for so many years. A picture of the woman she grew into, anyway. If this story moved you, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the Family Revenge Tales. We tell stories about the families we come from, the ones we build ourselves, and the courage it takes to finally tell the truth about both. If Avery's story reminded you of your own family or of someone you love, share it with them and let us know in the comments what part stayed with you the longest. You can love your family without sacrificing yourself for them. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't walking away. It's finally telling the truth and refusing to disappear again. As for the deeper meaning in this story, it speaks to something many families quietly struggle with: the danger of building a household around one child's needs while allowing another child to become invisible. It shows how silence, even when meant to keep peace, can cause lasting harm, and how the stories families tell about themselves can hide real pain for years. It highlights the importance of accountability over blind protection, the value of documented truth over convenient narratives, and the courage required to set boundaries with people you love. Most importantly, it reminds viewers that healing doesn't always mean full reconciliation. Sometimes it means telling the truth, protecting your own peace, and allowing everyone involved, including the person who caused harm, the chance to grow into something better.